What is up, YouTube? I am back, and in this video, we're going to be going through the Demigods from Elden Ring, both the main game and the DLC, and we're going to be ranking them on this tier list you see in front of you based on how good of a police officer I think they would make. I made a similar video like this not too long ago, ranking the NPCs on how good of a roommate I think they would make. I don't know why I think of video ideas like this. I know that they're really, really stupid and just flat out ridiculous video ideas, but I got something wrong with my brain that compels me to want to make stuff like this. So I got no other explanation for it other than that. So if this is something you might be interested in, make sure to stick around. But without wasting any more time, let's get started with our first demigod being Godrick. So where do I start with Godrick? Well, I think Godrick would just be the single most scummy, corrupt police officer out there. He would only be part of the force for his own personal gain. That would be the only thing he would care about. He would not care about upholding justice or protecting the public whatsoever. He would absolutely be somebody who would accept bribes even from dangerous criminals to let them off the hook, whether it's money, whether it's drugs, anything that benefits him. He would accept it and he would let them go without a second thought. He'd probably pull people over for super petty reasons too, like maybe going 5 over the speed limit or slightly swerving, going on your phone, not wearing a seatbelt, whatever. Just so he could look for like drugs, alcohol, money, valuable weapons that he could resell, just so he can take these things for himself. I could so see a situation where he finds maybe like a 30 rack in your trunk of Coors Light and he wants to go home and pound all that later. So he's going to be like, oh, you can't have that. Sorry, buddy. And he just takes it for himself, puts it in the back of his cruiser, and then he just writes you a basic speeding ticket and goes like, oh, well, you're lucky I'm a nice guy. I'm just going to give you the small little fine here, and I won't write you up for anything else. But in reality, he's just completely abusing his power. Could also see him being a complete and utter coward in an actual dangerous situation, like a shootout, like a high-speed chase, for example. He'd cower behind other officers any chance he gets, and he would make any excuses to get out of actually having to help in these situations. And I could also definitely see Godrick routinely like faking sick or faking injuries just to give himself the maximum amount of time off possible. So overall, just a complete scumbag, deceptive officer. Would absolutely not want this guy protecting the public in my town. The crime rate would probably skyrocket because of him, so he's going in D tier. Easy choice there. Next up, we have Rennala. So I think Rennala would only be hired to a police force to fill the role of a woman in the police force, just so they could check that box and be like, yep, we have women on our force. And just before I get into this, I want to make sure this is clear. I am not saying that a woman cannot be a good police officer. I don't mean that by any means. But if Rennala specifically was to be a police officer, she would be the epitome of a useless addition brought on to meet a quota. And that's just as simple as it is. She'd probably do her best, but she would just suck at everything. I would not trust her with a firearm. Do not give her a firearm. She's going to kill somebody by accident. She might mistake it for a taser. Like maybe she needs to use her taser in a tense moment, but instead she just pulls out her pistol and just mag dumps somebody. If you know, you know. Obviously that wouldn't be good at all. They'd probably have to keep her on super easy jobs like traffic stops or parking tickets. And even then she'd probably be super stressed out and concerned about it, even though it's a really easy job. She'd probably also need to ask other officers for help with just about everything. And I could totally see her getting overpowered by a dangerous criminal relatively easily. Like if she's trying to arrest them or put them in the cruiser, they're just gonna push her over and run away, or maybe take her gun and just start mag dumping the other officers. Obviously that would be a huge liability. So yeah, overall, obviously Rennala would not make a very good police officer in my opinion. She'd probably just be a liability to the force and would have just been hired to fill that quota of having enough women on your force. But at the very least, she'd still be better than Godrick because at least she tries and she's not super corrupt and scummy. So you know what? We could put her in C tier because she does her best. There's nothing that's blatantly negative. They would just have to keep her on easy jobs and monitor her, make sure she's doing well enough. And she wouldn't be that bad. Just don't have her out there on the serious cases, the intense cases, because she is going to be a liability and she's going to get someone killed. But C tier I think's fair. She's better than Godrick for sure. Next up, we have Radahn. I think Radahn, for the most part, would be very friendly and very soft-spoken around most people, despite his very large, muscular, intimidating stature. The people would love seeing this guy around town. He would just make them feel comfortable and make them feel safe. knowing that this absolute behemoth hulking monster is there to protect you and to uphold your laws and keep you safe. It would just be very comforting to know that and just see him walking around. Just like the sight of him would be enough to scare off most criminals, especially most like minor criminals. I think he'd mainly be reserved for the more serious crimes and investigations because he obviously would have a very valuable skill set to the Force, being very physically strong, very fast, and a great fighter with both weapons and in hand-to-hand combat. And if this guy was locked onto you as a criminal, you are just not escaping. You're done for. He's probably bulletproof. He's probably stab-proof. In human terms, pretty close to invincible. So there's not even a point of trying to fight back if he's locked onto you and you're a criminal. You are just done for. And to make that even worse, he does have a secret dark side that most people don't get to see because it's hidden behind his generally friendly outward expression that he puts on. But if you cross the line, so say you harm an innocent person or you're trying to shoot at the officers, he's going to go berserker on you. His body cam's going off, and you're never going to see the light of day again. And it's as simple as that. So I think all those things in mind, I think Radahn would be an excellent police officer. I'm going to put him in S tier. Next up, we have Rykard. So before I get into this one, I have no explanation whatsoever for the route that I've taken with Rykard as a police officer, but I just think for some reason that he'd be a school resource officer. Again, no explanation, but that's what I think about Rykard. I think he'd probably show up super hungover every day. He would do bare minimum, and the students would probably love him for it, but in reality, he's endangering them by not enforcing rules. But he would just sit in his office, just walk down the hallways every so often, and then just go back in his office and like gamble online. Probably go home every night and then just gamble on sports, gamble on like roulette, and then just get blackout drunk and pass out and wake up the next morning and just repeat the cycle. And I also think he'd secretly launder money from the school to give himself extra pay to fund his gambling and alcohol addiction. So yeah, that's basically it with Rykard. He's basically just a shitbag, and there's no other way to put it. So I'm going to put him in D tier. I was thinking C tier because he doesn't do anything that's like outwardly detrimental to the Force, but he does launder money and he does kind of endanger the safety of the people at the school because he's just not doing his job. And if there was actually a dangerous situation, he'd probably just be cooked because he's used to just being a lazy scumbag. So yeah, he's definitely D tier. All right, next up we have Morgott. I just want you to sit there for a second and think about the way that Morgott says the word tarnished, specifically the tone of voice and the expression. Maybe you're starting to see where I'm going with this. Morgott would be a racist cop. Maybe you don't like that, but that's how I see it. I think he would absolutely be a racist cop. The hate in this guy's voice as he says the word tarnish to you in the game, he just despises you for existing, and that is like the epitome of an extremely racist person. I can't say which race in particular he would dislike because he's not a human, but he would be a racist cop, just straight up, again. If you pass his race check, he'd be super friendly, he'd be chill in legal interactions. He'd probably let you off with a warning for like minor infractions, like maybe you're speeding. And he'd probably also treat you with kindness and respect and basically just be like, yeah, all right, kid, just get home safe, all right? Don't do it again. Sound good? All right, cool. But if you don't pass his race check, he would just see you drive by, he'd go and pull you over for no reason. He'd turn off his body cam, and he would just beat you for the love of the game. He does not care. He just would hate you for existing. Again, the epitome of a racist police officer. That's just who Morgott is. And yeah, that's definitely not someone I'd want on my force. Definitely not. I will say, at the same time, he does actually do his job to a degree, and that's at least more than what I can say for Rykard or Godrick just being completely just corrupt scumbags. So I am going to put him in C tier. You could definitely argue for D tier, but the fact that he at least does do his job, even though it's biased and not done well, it's still better than those other two that I put in D tier. So again, yeah, Morgott's going in C tier. All right, next up we have Mohg. I think Mohg would generally be a fine cop. He wouldn't excel in any particular area, but he also wouldn't be bad in any particular area. So he'd just be an all-around solid officer. He would do a wide variety of tasks, ranging all the way from like monitoring traffic to going hands-on in the most serious of cases. He'd probably be very reserved around his peers for the most part, mainly like keeping to himself and just focusing on getting the job done, getting home, just hanging out. But he secretly joined the police force because he has some creepy obsession with blood. He just loves seeing blood, he loves seeing carnage, and he will even go completely unhinged just to create some carnage if he's not being monitored. Like, I could so see Mohg isolating a criminal that he's supposed to be apprehending, turning off his body cam, and then just beating them into a pulp. Beating them into a scene straight out of a horror movie just because he loves to see that shit. He's smiling from ear to ear as he's doing it. It's the best moments of his life when he's doing stuff like that. And then if he ever got pressed about that, he would just be like, well, it was self-defense. He was going to try to kill me. He was going to try to shoot me. He was going to try to stab me, whatever. And they'd probably just be like, well, Mohg is pretty trustworthy. He usually does a good job, so he's probably telling the truth. But in reality, he just lives for those moments where he can create an absolute atrocity. And that's the full reason why he joined, and nobody even knows that. So that's kind of terrifying. At the same time, again, at least he does his job well for the most part, more than I can say for those guys in the D tier. So I'm going to put Mohg in C tier as well. Next up, we have Maliketh. So Maliketh would just be a huge, terrifying German Shepherd, straight up. There's no other role I could see him in, obviously. He's a dog. Just imagine you're running from the cops, and they're just like, all right, so you better turn yourself in right now and surrender, or else we're going to release the dog on you. And then this absolute 20-foot behemoth just comes rumbling towards you in a full set of armor. You're just dog food. You're done. Just stare up at the sky and accept your fate, because you're getting turned into just straight up slabs of meat, and he's going to eat you, and he's going to tear you apart first, and it's going to be brutal, and it's going to be excruciating, and there's zero things that you can do about it to stop it. You are just absolutely cooked. You are done for. And yeah, that's basically all I can say about Maliketh. He is the most terrifying police dog there's ever been, so I'm going to put him in S tier. He does his job perfectly. All right, next up we have Godfrey. I think Godfrey would be that old, past his prime, retired police chief who mainly stays home and just chills out with his dogs, but he does help with the tough investigations and gets out on the field when they really need him to from time to time. He'd be super laid back and friendly 99% of the time, but that 1% of the time that he needs to step out onto the field and give a hand to the officers, even in his old age, he is an absolute machine in apprehending criminals and in fighting against crime. He's obviously insanely strong and durable. He's only rivaled in that category by Radahn and then someone else who we'll talk about next. And if this dude comes out of retirement to come for you, you might as well just start digging a hole, because that's where your body's going to go within a few days. He needs to take out his pent-up, unhinged rage on somebody every so often. And if he gets put on your case, like I said, you're going to get beaten into red slop. You're going to get thrown into the ground, and you're going to disappear from the earth without a trace. I think that's what I'd want from my old retired police chief, just getting out there and keeping the town safe when he's most needed. So I'm going to put him in S tier. Next up, we have Radagon. I think Radagon would probably be the active police chief in this alternate universe. He'd be very stern and decisive in his command of his subordinates, and he would not put up with any bullshit at all. He's definitely given a few ass whoopings to Godrick over the years just for his scummy behavior and his mishaps. He's obviously somewhat unassuming in stature in comparison to somebody like Radahn or Godfrey, but he'd make up for this with immense strength, immense speed, and great proficiency with weapons and all the tools at his disposal, so like batons, pistols, tasers, whatever. Obviously, as a police chief, he'd be heavily involved in the most serious investigations, and he'd be willing to blur the line set by human morality to achieve his goals. So I could see him like turning off the security cameras in the station when he's doing an interrogation, breaking a few nails, breaking a few fingers to get the answers he needs. Because in his view, you do need to cross the lines set by general morality to achieve overarching justice at times. So he does have good intentions. He's just willing to cross the line to achieve it, is basically what I've already said and what I'm trying to get at. So if he was to be coming after you as a criminal, he probably wouldn't even be wearing a body cam in the first place, because he's a police chief. He gets to decide. And you're just done for, because he's doing whatever it takes to get you and to enforce justice on you to the utmost extent. And again, like I kind of just said with Godfrey, that's what I want from my police chief in my town, so I'm putting him in S tier. All right, next up we have Malenia. So I think Malenia would be the polar opposite of Rennala when it comes to woman officers. She would be heavily involved in serious investigations, and she would not be afraid of the action at all. She would always try to prove herself as the best officer, and this competitive nature would make her very dependable and consistent in getting things done. Criminals would also probably underestimate her, one, because she's a woman, and two, because she's not very intimidating in stature, kind of like I just said with Radagon, but she's even less intimidating. But because she's so proficient with weapons and in hand-to-hand combat, she could handle almost anybody, even like dudes twice her size. She could just whoop their ass without breaking a sweat. So yeah, Malenia is a great officer. I'm going to put her in S tier. All right, next up we have Messmer. So I think Messmer would be very loyal to the Force. He would do whatever is necessary to achieve his objectives. He's obviously very skinny and small in stature, kind of similar to Malenia, and he looks like he'd kind of be a pushover, but he's actually a menace when it comes to general combat and when it comes to fighting with weapons. So underestimating him as a criminal would be a huge mistake. He'll whoop up on dudes twice his size easily. Again, like I said with Malenia, without even breaking a sweat. He probably has the hand speed of like a mantis shrimp in hand-to-hand combat, so don't mess with him, don't try to press him, don't underestimate him, or you're getting your nose broken at bare minimum. The only negative I'd say with Messmer is, obviously, like I said, he'd usually be a very reliable and efficient officer, but he'd occasionally just crash out when things aren't going his way, and he might just start mag dumping a random criminal who doesn't even deserve it and who has clearly been made defenseless. But Messmer would just not even care. Messmer would just take out all his unhinged anger in a moment of just crashing out and just mag dump some undeserving criminal that had probably already been beaten to a pulp and had already given up, and then Messmer just solidifies it and then sends the dude to the afterlife. So that obviously wouldn't be good. And because of that, I'm going to put him in A tier. I can't quite put him in S tier because those occasional crash outs are not a good look for my police force, obviously. All right, last up we have Miquella. Miquella is the single most lazy officer on the force and is also extremely, extremely entitled. He expects everyone else in the Force to treat him as if he's the most important person in the room at all times. And the only way he gets away with this is because that Radagon's his dad, and nobody wants to press Radagon because he's super intimidating. Even though his son's an entitled little bitch, no one even wants to say anything to Radagon, obviously because Radagon's terrifying. Miquella, however, is very helpful in the mental in-station side of investigations, and he's able to come up with extremely elaborate and genius plans that are pretty much just invaluable in solving tough cases. He's like their go-to guy when it comes to these elaborate undercover operations to solve big investigations, to finally get answers on things that have been going on for a while. He's the guy that does the mental gymnastics and figures out the most efficient solutions to things, puts it all together. But in spite of this, he doesn't help in the field whatsoever. And to make this even worse, he has this weird obsession with his half-brother Radahn that everyone else finds really weird and creepy. And he just constantly goes around and just glazes him, gives him these weird compliments that even makes Radahn uncomfortable. He follows him around. He asks him for like weird favors. Like he just seemingly just won't leave him alone. And Radahn's too nice to say anything about this, but makes him super uncomfortable. It weirds him out, and he just wants Miquella to leave him alone. But anyway, because Miquella is so smart when it comes to the mental side of things, I do think he does have some value to the Force. But because he does not get involved in the field whatsoever, obviously this value is diminished. So I'm going to put him in B tier. Alright, so that is going to do it for my Elden Ring Demigods as police officers tier list. If you did enjoy, make sure to like, comment, and consider subscribing. And I will be back very soon with more content like this. Goodbye.